Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 715. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. Today, a funny thing happened on the way to the essay this week. I was distracted by feedback from a colleague on a workshop Jeremy Willets and I developed and delivered this week. We discussed why the phrase work entry describes how work gets to teams and organizations, and why work intake masks problems in the real world. We also had a visit from Susan Parente and her Not A Scrumdamentalist column. This month, Susan answers listeners' questions about whether it makes sense for a Scrum Master to also play other roles on the team. Do you have questions that you'd like Susan, John, Jeremy, Tony, or myself to answer? Leave a message at 01-440-668-5717 or email us at SPaMCASTinfo@gmail.com. Work entry versus work intake. Thomas M. Cagley Jr., Megan E. Cagley. Jeremy Willets and I recently facilitated a workshop titled Managing Work Entry, How the Mushy Middle is Killing Your Agility. It's at the Path to Agility 2022. Work entry is how work gets to an organization or team. Not the sexiest topic in Agile, but it's impactful. In the run-up to the conference, we previewed a version with a group of trusted colleagues and friends. Amongst the feedback was a comment, "Don't you mean work intake?" The short answer is no. There's a slightly longer answer, but it's not business safe. Yet, the path to that simple answer is a bit longer. Understanding why no is the right answer is important to foster understanding for anyone who wants to embrace Agile or Lean principles. The journey to the recognition that work entry was the right phrase crystallized as I reread Chapter 3 of Lyssa Adkins' Coaching Agile Teams. In this chapter, the author discusses the impact of violent language. As a coach, the language we use to deliver feedback and messages can have negative overtones if we use violent language. In our estimation, intake is a softer, more neutral word than entry. Neutral has never been our intent. The word intake, in this context, refers to the amount of work taken into a team or organization. The word take confers that the team or organization has the power to accept or pull work. Agile and Lean rely on the concept of teams pulling work rather than having it pushed at them. The idea of intake requires teams to have a real choice. Teams that pull work based on capacity determined via planning, Monte Carlo analysis, or yesterday's weather are examples of choice. The ability to control and pull work requires leadership. Teams need leadership so they can self-organize and manage how they are approaching the business problems they are trying to solve. Teams that control how work enters have an outward mindset. Teams with an outward point of view focus on doing the work that delivers the most value. Along with leadership comes the need for bidirectional trust. Trust that the team will pursue the goals laid out by the product owner and that they will deliver. Organizations that promote or allow jumping the queue will never have trust. Trust occurs when actions are transparent and predictable. When someone outside the team makes choices for a team about what they will do and how they will do it, control replaces trust. Command and control, micromanagement are two management styles used in low trust scenarios. These types of behaviors are at odds with the philosophy of Agile and Lean. The word entry is a forceful, aggressive word. Lean and Agile philosophies embrace the idea that teams pull prioritized work based on their capacity and capabilities. When teams live by Lean and Agile principles, how they get work is work intake. Alternatively, regardless of professed philosophy, when work is pushed into a team, the term intake sugarcoats problems. Push or uncontrolled acceptance of work is not agile. If a team cannot control how they accept work, the proper phrase is work entry. Thoughts, comments, all welcome. Please feel free to reach out to us at spamcastinfo@gmail.com or leave a message at 01-440-668-5717. We look forward to the conversation. Susan Parente, welcome back to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Hey, Tom. Great to be here. I've got my latte over here on my coffee warmer, and I am good to go.
I'm drinking French press, probably fresh French press this morning.
Nice.
Susan, I really do look forward to your I'm Not A Scrumdamentalist column, both in terms of having the conversation and then editing it, because very frankly, I learn a ton in both of those circumstances. I've been asked, a couple of questions came in, and I want to thank the listeners, and feel free to throw in questions, because we can always get people like Susan and John and Jeremy and all the rest to weigh in on these topics. But today, Susan, let's start with a question I got recently. Things have been changed to protect the innocent a little bit. Dear SPaMCAST, my team accepts and assigns all work that comes to it whenever we get work, even though the PO doesn't know. And the team lead says, it doesn't really matter because the product owner isn't the customer. They signed that WIP challenge. So they start everything and, just everything that comes in, they take and just do regardless. Help?
Well, that sounds like a bad situation. We'll start with that. I'm not going to give you any pretend empathy here, like that. You just hang in there, So wow. So I have similar experiences. I will say that.
Sorry.
Here's my challenge with this. I'm starting to see that everybody thinks the Scrum Master is the most important job in Scrum. And I disagree. I think the most important job is the product owner. Technically, the most important job is a team member because they're doing the work. I know, I got that. But there's never a team where there's no one on the team. Maybe one or two people. That could be tough. But I've rarely seen a Scrum I've never seen a Scrum implementation where there are no team members and just a product owner and Scrum Master. But I have often seen a team that doesn't have a Scrum Master, a team that doesn't have a product owner. And I would take the team with the product owner versus the one with just the Scrum Master. Okay, so if you have a Scrum Master and not a product owner, I mean, we shouldn't have to make these decisions, right? But everybody thinks the Scrum Master is this like uber important person. They're really there to keep the train on the tracks, make sure people don't get off and start doing waterfall or go back to these, bad ways of doing things or get stuck with themselves, right? A lot of times, you and I have talked about professional situations. I've called colleagues of mine when I have a challenge, and they always seem incredibly insightful. However, if they're having a challenge and they call me, I seem incredibly insightful. So having somebody who's outside of it to be able to say, hey, this is what I see, here's what we should do. Everybody works well with that. And that's what the Scrum Masters are. They're a coach, they're a facilitator. They end up being a person who does reporting, a person who creates CRs, a person who picks what the team's going to do next. Like, a Scrum Master / product owner. Oh my God, I hate that one even more. I don't know what I hate more, a Scrum Master with no product owner or the Scrum Master / product owner role, which does not exist, by the way. And I totally get it. I call myself an idealistic realist. So I totally understand that everybody's where they're at. For example, one of the teams I coached in the past, they were in one of these scenarios where, this team doesn't have a Scrum Master, but this one has a product owner and a Scrum Master role. This one has everything they need, so everybody's in like a different place. And I totally get that. But I think people need to understand the ramification of not having a product owner. Okay. So first of all, the team does not have time to prioritize and pick the work to do. I mean, they can get a prioritized list and then select, okay, I know I need to do this before that. And this we have the team members to do this week, and this we don't because so-and-so's out on leave, right? So yes, the team can take a part in selecting the work that they do, but it needs to be from a prioritized product backlog. And without a product owner, this team's being tasked by other people. Who's to say those other people know what's important to the end user? I was talking to a colleague of mine, and he said when he started a Scrum Master role that he insisted upon talking to the end users. And I said, great, how did you find them? He goes, I just kept asking until I found who they were, and I sat down and talked to them. He said, and he's one of these Scrum Master / product owners, but he's being a good product owner in talking to the end users and understanding what the needs and requirements were. One of the things I really don't like about it, this goes back to my days of doing software development. As a software developer, you don't really have time to do that. It takes a lot of time to understand the customer, what they need, et cetera, to prioritize things. That's why we used to have business analysts to do that work. And I hate to see a developer, like, let's say the developer's making $100 an hour, or maybe they're making less, but they're billed out at that, right? So maybe it's more than $100 an hour. Like, you're going to take that person and have them do BA work? It just doesn't make sense to me. And I see that as waste. And fundamentally, when I'm looking at projects and I'm looking at how things are managed, it's lean. Like, we should always be looking for and removing waste. And that's a form of waste by having somebody in a developer role prioritizing or just, picking what to do next. I mean, it basically is prioritizing. So I don't know if they ended it work in process, WIP challenged, or if it was that you ended it that way. But I think that is a challenge, because what happens when you have 5 competing requirements from 5 different people? What comes first then?
You just start them all and then only work on them when somebody yells at you. I think that's really what in the real world happens, especially in this case.
It sounds like, what do they call it? Scrummer fall. Something like that. I've had teams where, and actually a lot of people do this. You might have seen this too, Tom, where during sprint planning, all of the user stories are assigned to team members. So none of them are in the to-do bin, right? So what happens is there's one or two things that happen. One thing that can happen is somebody actually gets through the user stories quickly and they're all done and they're sitting there waiting, and it's like, okay, well, there's 2 days left in the sprint, but I'm done, right? And then there's somebody else who's got some things still in the queue and they're working them and they're in progress, so they can't really hand them back over to somebody. Like, they got to kind of try to finish them. But, the other thing that can happen is everybody's got something half done. So you've got a lot more work in progress, because, I mean, let's say you have a team of 7 people. If everybody's got a story in the queue that they're working on, that's 7 stories in the queue. So in cases like that, what I suggest is after sprint planning, pick 1 or 2 stories, but leave the rest in the hopper, right? And so the first thing I got back is, well, people are going to forget about that, and then they're not going to do that work. And I'm like, well, they're not getting through all of it anyway. So at least we'll have less half-done work, right? Which, oh, by the way, then what happens with the half-done work? We push it over to the next sprint, scrum or fall.
Yeah, so high levels of escape rate is a sign from God that something has gone wrong.
Well, the good news is, in that case, that team actually took the coaching and said, okay, well, we'll try it for a week or 2. I was like, okay, well, that's cool. I mean, at least, that is probably the worst thing. So any, these challenges that people have, if you're dealing with an organization where they are resistant to try something new, even though what they're doing isn't working, that is your fundamental problem. It's not this role division thing, right? Because if something's not working, it just innately, you should say, let's try something else, right? So is it Einstein? Like, continuing to do the same thing, expecting different results is insanity.
Yeah, that has definitely been attributed to Einstein. I have actually tried to track that down. I can't really find exactly where that quote comes from, but regardless.
So, I mean, I know this person's probably looking for real advice. What do you do? So, yeah. I mean, for one, who's the champion? Who's the person in the organization that can influence this? And, we need somebody in that space. Like, even if they don't, they're saying there's a PO there, but they're not really the customer. Okay, that's fine, but can they represent the customer? I have been a person who wasn't the customer, who acted like a product owner, and that you can do that. I don't disagree that you can do that. And that is very prevalent because a lot of times customers, I don't know, they don't have time, whatever the reason being. But you cannot represent the customer and be a team member. You can't represent the customer and be the Scrum Master. So the product owner, it's really important for us to have a product owner. And even if we can't find a customer representative to be the product owner, it can be somebody who's representing the customer. So maybe the product owner isn't the customer. I think that's okay, but they need to represent the customer wholly, not represent the customer and represent the team, not represent the customer and be the Scrum Master. I think that's their sole job. And so I'm gonna kind of relax a little bit and say they do not have to come from the customer, but they need to understand the customer. Obviously, if you put somebody in that role and they're new to it, they're not going to understand the customer that well. But, my colleague, what he did, started meeting with the end user, started understanding the requirements, started to understand the product so that he could be the voice of the customer. So I'm okay with that. So this product owner in this situation who isn't the customer, I don't think that that's so much the problem. It's that things need to funnel through them. And I think that one of the big challenges with any of these challenges, like I said before, is willing to change, willing to try something new. And also, who's the champion? Who's the champion in the organization that you can go to and say, hey, we have a product owner, but they need to be stepping up and be the funnel for things. Things should go only through them, not directly to the team. Because basically, I mean, I don't know what you would call that they're doing. It's not Scrum, it's not Agile. I mean, they're without a prioritized product backlog with things coming directly to them. It's like you're doing help desk tickets. I don't know. It's like you're not even doing waterfall, right? Because in waterfall, you have the requirements up front and you do the planning, but you still have the requirements from the customer. I mean, if you're getting them from all these different people, like I said, it's kind of like bug fixing help desk tickets. Like that's not.
If there's no control over work entry, none of this stuff, whether it's Agile, Safe, Scrum, Waterfall, Rational, none of this stuff is going to work at all.
No.
Someday I'll ask you if you would change your answer if I told you, well, why not? If I told you that the product owner probably at least represents 2 or 3 of the end customers, and that there are lots of other end customers, that no one can actually represent them all, but it's more the team lead's problem in terms of they don't want to lose control and think that it's better customer service just to say yes to any time the phone rings.
That's very insightful of you, Tom. So I think what you're saying is you're kind of like rephrasing it and saying maybe the problem here isn't the product owner, it's the team lead who's allowing the requirements to come directly to the team. And you're probably right. That's probably what's happening. And team leads, it's tough because they're like your firefighter, they're like your sniper, you're like, oh, they're the bomb, they're awesome, everybody loves them, right? And so because that, they have a lot of, what is that called? There's different types of power. We talk about it in like the PMP and stuff like that. There's different types of power, and it's a power like by subject matter expertise. And so people will empower them because, well, they did that release and they did the install and everything went well and they're a superhero. And so, all right, let's let them call the shots. And, developers should develop. Having been a product owner, I was called a product manager, but basically having been a product owner, I can tell you that developers are great, but they don't understand the ramifications of the market and market-driven needs and different customers and which customers are important. When I was doing product development as a product manager, which basically I was a product owner before we were calling them that, I listened to my customers and I needed to know which customers' voices were most important to the organization. We particularly had a very large customer. I think I can say this because I'm not saying even where it was, but GE was one of our large customers. So when GE wanted something, it didn't matter that we had other customers. GE got more of a voice because they were buying more of our product. And the developers wouldn't know that, but I knew that because I was working closely with sales. And so if they wanted something, that became high priority right away. And they knew it. GE knows it. Just like the federal government, most of my clients are federal government clients, and they know that when they demand something that they're going to get it, because if they don't get it from you, they'll find some other contractor to get it from. So, it's just like the cold, harsh world. But I don't know that developers know the market so much, because even if you have customers that are loud that you want to listen to, you also have to think about the marketability of the product you're creating. There are other people you're trying to sell it to who aren't currently your customers. And so only the product owner would know that and have a feel for that, because ultimately they're responsible if you come out with a new product and it doesn't sell. Right? It's not the developers responsible for that. The developers is responsible to deliver the miracle. Like, make this happen. We don't know how to make this happen, but make this happen. You could look at things like, look at like Tesla, right? So it was very interesting to me because, Elon's an engineer and he owns a company. I find it to be very funny. And if somebody doesn't appreciate the humor, ask another engineer what they think of that, because I'm an engineer. That's why I find that funny. I actually own my company of one, but it's very funny when an engineer owns a company because they don't often think about what the customer wants. They think about what they think would be cool, and no criticism to Elon, because I'm not even in the arena. But I just found it funny, like his Cybertruck. He made it bulletproof, and he was on like one of Jay Leno's garage shows. And he goes, "Why'd you make it bulletproof?" He goes, "It's a truck. Don't you think it should be bulletproof?" And it's like literally like the success of Elon is that he's like, "Oh, I just thought it would be cool." Now that actually works well if the customers like him, right? If his customers like him, then he's a great product owner. But if his customers like, "I don't care if my truck's bulletproof," then that doesn't work, right? And so I would say by look at the results, he's been very successful. So chances are he represents his customer. So you don't see a lot of people in Iowa with Tesla pickup trucks. And I don't think you're going to, because I don't think Elon Musk knows what people in Iowa want, right?
Yeah, agreed. Susan, if people wanted to continue the conversation, how would they go about doing that?
You can find me on LinkedIn under Susan Parente. I actually show up in the DC area, even though I do stuff along the Northeast corridor from New York down to DC. Or you can email me, Parente, Parente, at S as in Sam, the number 3 -tec.com. I would love to talk to you about anything agile, product owner, or even traditional, and why and when to use traditional versus agile. So call me, email me, let's talk.
All right. Until next time. In Reread Saturday News, Chapter 4 of Coaching Agile Teams by Lyssa Adkins discusses the idea that a team, individual, or organization follows a path from a learner to mastery to teacher using the Shu Ha Ri metaphor. The concept of Shu Ha Ri represents a continuum of learning. In martial arts or any demonstrable activity, practitioners must learn and practice before they take the next step forward. That means we, as coaches, have to adapt. Remember, buy a copy of Coaching Agile Teams by Lyssa Adkins, link in the show notes, and read along. Also, link in the show notes to all 5 of the current entries in this reread. In the next Software Process and Measurement Cast, SPaMCAST 716 features our interview with Jeff Perry. Jeff and I talked about consciously guiding a career in technology. We also wrestled with the difference between a series of jobs and a career. Jeff delivers a ton of hard-won advice. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?